After I broke up with Charlie, I got pregnant and left. For years later, I was suffering through a particularly nasty heat when my son came running in. "Dad, I found you an alpha." I took one look and my world went dark. He hadn't just found an alpha. He'd found his own father. The air was unusually muggy, and the back of my neck burned. My gland was abnormally swollen, which could only mean one thing: my heat was coming. After leaving work early, I didn't even bother picking up my son, rushing straight home instead. I was an Omega who had been transported to this world. And besides me, no one else here had a second gender. That meant there were no suppressants that could help me with my heat. Other people could smell my pheromones, but they weren't affected by them. The elevator was thick with the scent of orange blossom pheromones. I pressed a hand to the back of my neck, leaning against the cool wall, already slick with sweat. Someone next to me, overwhelmed by the intense scent, wrinkled their nose and complained, "Who wears that much perfume? It's suffocating." Hearing that, I tried to shrink into myself, struggling to rein in my pheromones. By the time I stepped out of the elevator, I was soaked in sweat. My body was damp all over, and my legs felt like jelly, barely able to hold me up. I finally stumbled into my apartment, collapsing onto the bed and burying myself under the covers, gasping for breath. The room didn't just smell of my orange blossom pheromones, there was another scent, a woody fragrance. On the nightstand was a nearly empty bottle of cologne. I had secretly taken it with me when I left Charlie Miller 4 years ago. It was the same cologne he always wore, a perfect substitute for an alpha's pheromones. Come to think of it, that woody scent was probably why my heat had started early. I ran into Charlie today. For years had passed, and Charlie seemed to have gotten even more handsome. When I saw him, he was on the phone, his expression cold. Even though our breakup wasn't my fault, my heart started hammering in my chest. I was about to turn and walk away when he hung up and called out to me, "Eric, get over here." As if I had no control over my own body, I walked toward him. After 4 years, he was still wearing that same woody cologne. The familiar scent calmed my racing heart. He cupped my face in his hand. "Can you stop this? Come home with me." I was the one who broke up with him, the one who blocked him. And after 4 years, he still thought I was just throwing a tantrum. Even so, he hadn't once tried to coax me back in all that time. Maybe if he had, I wouldn't have left. His grip was a little tight, and I winced. He immediately loosened his hold, his touch turning into a gentle caress. Suddenly, it felt like old times again. I glanced up at him, and the hint of softness in his eyes made my head spin. My heartbeat went wild, and my pheromones began to leak out. To keep them from spiraling out of control, I quickly looked away. "I don't know you." I pushed his hand away and turned to leave. The woody scent was too familiar. Just that brief exposure was enough to make my gland burn. It wasn't even real pheromones, but it was still enough to trigger my heat. "Andy, you'll have to get home on your own later and pick up some dinner." I pulled out my phone and sent a voice message to my son's smartwatch. A moment later, Andy replied, his bright, clear voice coming through the phone. "Dad, is your heat here again?" After I came to this world, my son was the only one who believed I was an Omega from another place. Even Charlie, the man who got me pregnant, just thought I was losing my mind. "Yeah, so you'll have to handle dinner yourself. Be safe on your way back." Ever since I was pregnant, Andy had been an easy kid. As far as pheromones went, mine were usually enough to soothe him. He craved an alpha father scent, of course, but a spritz of that cologne would always calm him down. He made friends easily and was a social butterfly in our neighborhood. So, when I was busy with work, he could get himself home from kindergarten and even grab dinner on the way. After making sure he was safe, I burrowed back under the covers. A fire seemed to be raging inside me, heat coursing through my limbs. I couldn't help but think about running into Charlie this morning. It was all his fault. If it weren't for him, my heat wouldn't have come early. With no way to relieve the burning, I had to find another solution. Icy water flowed from the tap, gradually filling the bathtub. Sinking into the cold water, I let out a sigh of relief as the chill chased away the heat. But it didn't last long. The feverish warmth crept back up. Holding my breath, I submerged myself completely, letting the cold water envelop me. A few moments later, I heard Andy's voice from outside. "Dad, I'm home. I found you in Alpha." The kid must have been secretly listening to those ABO audiobooks online again. Besides me, there were no other alphas or omegas in this world. I ignored him, resurfacing for a breath before sinking back into the water. Just as I went under, the bathroom door burst open with a bang. Andy's panicked voice followed. "Dad, no, don't do it." I popped my head out of the water, but before I could explain, he had already vanished. That kid. 1 second he's telling me not to give up, the next he's gone. His voice, slightly muffled, drifted in from the other room. "My dad's trying to drown himself in the tub. What do I do?" I couldn't tell if he was on the phone or talking to someone. "Andy." After a long moment, I heard footsteps outside, but they weren't the light, quick steps of a child. They were heavy and steady. Oh no. What Andy said just now, it couldn't be true, could it? He didn't actually just drag some random guy off the street and bring him home, did he? The next second, a familiar voice sounded from the bathroom doorway. "Eric, get up." Before I even saw him, I smelled that intoxicating woody scent that haunted my dreams. I looked up and saw the very cause of my premature heat, Charlie Miller, standing in the doorway. He seemed to have actually believed Andy, his face etched with unconcealed worry. How did he know Andy was connected to me, and how did he find this place? The thought that he had met Andy, that they had come here together, made my heart skip a beat. I scrambled to my feet, dripping water everywhere, and grabbed a towel to wrap around my waist. "What are you doing here?" He stepped closer, the woody fragrance intensifying. The scent made my gland ache even more, and my head spun dizzily. He backed me against the wall. "Your heat's here? Can you even stand? Do you need me to carry you? Leave me alone." I glared at him and shoved him hard. He didn't budge. Instead, he grabbed my wrist. I don't know if it was my imagination, but the woody scent seemed to grow stronger. His scent was a temptation, and I found myself leaning closer against my will. "I thought you didn't believe I was an Omega." The memory made a fresh wave of resentment wash over me. When I first came to this world, he was the only person I knew. I'd been by his side for over 6 months. But Charlie never believed I was an Omega, not even when I went into heat. "Yeah, I don't," he said, his hand reaching for the back of my neck. The moment his fingers brushed against my sensitive gland, a tingling numbness shot through me. Before I could react, I was suddenly lifted off my feet. Damn you, Charlie Miller. Taking advantage of me like this. The heat made my mind foggy and weak, and I couldn't struggle as he carried me. He tossed me onto the bed, and a sliver of clarity returned. My voice trembled. "Andy's still here." He paused, then turned and walked out of the room. I let out a sigh of relief and burrowed back under the covers. A moment later, the footsteps returned. "Charlie, I don't need you. Just go." Remembering his "I don't believe you" made me furious. If only Omegas could mark people. I'd mark Charlie so hard he'd have no choice but to believe me. "Oh, so you want me to leave?" he asked, stopping by the bed with his back to me. He was leaving, but what about my heat? A breakup was a breakup, and being angry was one thing. But without suppressants or an alpha, I couldn't be without a tool either. "Charlie, you..." When I woke up 3 days later, the first thing I saw was the man sleeping soundly beside me. Feeling refreshed, I got out of bed, rubbing my aching lower back as I looked at the still sleeping Charlie. In some ways, Charlie was still useful. At least now I didn't have to suffer through my heat anymore. I hadn't seen much of Andy for the past 3 days. After washing up, I went to look for my son. I searched the entire apartment, but there was no sign of him. It was like he had vanished into thin air. I remembered that night, Charlie had left the room for a moment before coming back, and then it was all a blur of tangled limbs in the dark. I hadn't even had a chance to check what Andy was doing. "Charlie, where's my son?" I shook Charlie awake, grabbing his shoulders. He looked groggy, his hair a mess, a far cry from his usual cool and composed self. There was a bite mark on his collarbone that I'd left yesterday, and the sight of it made my face flush. Charlie answered calmly he went home. Home? What other home did Andy have besides this one with me? There was only one possibility. Charlie knew Andy was his son, too. This was bad. I had spent 4 years carefully hiding, only to have it all undone by a single heat. Give me my son back. I couldn't live without Andy. In this world, he was the only one who believed me without question. There was no one else. Without him, I had no other real connection to this world. I came to this world after a car accident. I was on my way to the airport that day when our car was hit. My head slammed into the seat in front of me, and I blacked out. When I opened my eyes, I was in the arms of a strange man whose car had also been in the crash. We were still at the scene. There was blood on the man's temple, and his brow was furrowed. Are you okay? He didn't seem the least bit curious about how I had suddenly appeared in his arms. Before I could ask any questions, I passed out again. The next time I opened my eyes, everything was white. I sat up, and a sharp pain shot through my head, making my vision go black. Just as I was about to fall back, a large hand steadied me. I looked up and saw the same man from before the blackout. He was still here. It was so strange. Why wasn't he curious about how I'd appeared in his arms? Even I didn't know the answer to that. But I was very curious. What time is it? I asked, rubbing my temples. The man told me a date I didn't recognize at all. A wave of panic washed over me. Where are we? An unfamiliar time, plus the fact that I'd suddenly materialized in a stranger's arms. As a connoisseur of web novels, I quickly figured out what might have happened. The man paused before answering, Earth. I said. After a long silence, I took the initiative. I'm an Omega. The man had his pheromones completely under control. I couldn't smell anything even when I was close to him. I was a little disappointed. An alpha's pheromones were the best medicine for an Omega, serving not just to dominate but also to soothe. I was hoping he could help ease my headache. Are you a beta? I asked tentatively. The man didn't answer. He just walked to the head of the bed and pressed the call button. Who are you? When he didn't respond, I didn't mind and just kept asking questions. Charlie Miller. So, are you a beta? I couldn't help but ask again. Charlie gave me a strange look. A second later, I heard his calm voice. No, I'm human. My suspicions were quickly confirmed. I had transmigrated, and I had landed in a world where second genders hadn't evolved yet. I couldn't smell any pheromones from Charlie, nor from the nurses. I whispered to Charlie, you guys don't have second genders in this world? I don't know. For some reason, Charlie was always frowning when he looked at me, a hint of helplessness in his eyes. In this world, I didn't know anyone except Charlie. When I was discharged, it felt natural to go home with him, and I naturally came to depend on him. A lone man and a lone Omega, spending all our time together, plus the sudden onset of my heat. Charlie and I got together very quickly. He usually seemed quiet and reserved, but during my heat, he held me and soothed me endlessly. He whispered all sorts of things that made my heart melt and my face burn. Even knowing he wasn't an alpha, I still begged him to bite my gland. Are you sure you want this? He asked, but he bit down on my gland anyway. It was a strange and wonderful feeling. The woody cologne he wore clung to me like pheromones, easing my discomfort. We dated like that for over 6 months, until I discovered Charlie's secret. In Charlie's house, I accidentally opened a cabinet. Inside was an array of baby supplies. Next to them was a baby photo album. I didn't dare flip through it. After a quick glance at the birth photo on the first page, I put it back with trembling hands. Charlie had a child, but I had never seen his partner. The baby things and the album weren't definitive proof, though. Is the stuff in the cabinet for your kid? Charlie, do you have a child? When I confronted him, he just frowned, offering no explanation. If he had just explained, I probably would have believed him. After all, I was an Omega. His woody scent could soothe me, and he could help me through my heats. Besides, in this strange world, he was the only one I knew, the only one I was familiar with. I didn't want to lose the sense of security he gave me, but he didn't say a single word. That same day, I broke up with Charlie and moved out. The irony was, not long after, I found out I was pregnant. To keep Charlie from finding out about the baby, I went into hiding. Men couldn't get pregnant in this world. If I was discovered, what if he forced me to have an abortion or turned me into a research subject? I gave birth in an unlicensed clinic and raised the baby on my own. But just 4 years later, not long after my baby started kindergarten, Charlie found me. You have your own kid, so why are you trying to take mine? Unable to break free from Charlie's grip, I could only resort to biting him to vent my frustration. A fresh, bloody bite mark soon appeared on his shoulder. He didn't even flinch. He held my wrist with one hand and reached for his phone with the other. He said just one thing: "Eric's awake," before hanging up. Who was he telling I was awake? I didn't know that many people in this world. The only people I was close to were my son and the man right in front of me, Charlie. I looked at him warily. Who were you talking to? You don't need to know that. Charlie let go of my hand and checked the bite marks on his body with his phone. I heard him mutter, "Nice set of teeth." My face suddenly burned, and I changed the subject. "Aren't you curious how I have a son?" He glanced at me. "Didn't you say you're an Omega?" Oh, so now he believed I was an Omega. Wait, doesn't that mean he also thinks Andy is our child? "Andy isn't your son." I lied through my teeth. He gave me a flat look, then got out of bed and started walking away. For some reason, I felt a pang of guilt, afraid he already knew. I pressed on. "You have a son too, right? So we're even." He stopped. "Who told you that?" Before I could say another word, Andy's voice came from outside. "Dad, how are you feeling?" The moment he appeared in the doorway, Charlie swooped him up. Andy expertly wrapped his arms around Charlie's neck. Charlie carried him over to my bed and, with a pat on his shoulder, gently placed him in my arms. Neither of them said a word, yet they seemed to know exactly what the other wanted, moving with a familiar ease. "Dad?" Andy's voice broke through my scattered thoughts.
I'm okay, sweetie.
I kissed his cheek. "Have you had breakfast?" "Not yet." Andy shook his head and planted a slobbery kiss on my face. "What do you want to eat?" Charlie suddenly asked from the side. "I'll make it." I gave him a skeptical look. For years apart, and Charlie had learned to cook? Andy shouted, "Seafood porridge." Then he added cheerfully, the uncle's cooking is the best." Did I hear that right? What did Andy just call Charlie? It was the weekend, so Andy didn't have school. All day, I watched Andy's little mouth, listening to him call Charlie uncle. "Dad, you've been staring at me all day," Andy mumbled. I guess I must have misheard him. Ever since that day of my heat, Charlie had been living at my place, and no amount of nagging could get him to leave. I don't know what kind of spell he cast on Andy, but my son insisted he stay. After another failed attempt to kick Charlie out, the frustration from both of them gave me a headache. "Why don't you just go home with him and be his son?" "No way." Andy hugged my leg tightly. Andy and Charlie exchanged a look. Then Charlie spoke up. "I don't have another child. If we get back together, Andy will be my son." "Not necessary," I said, rejecting him flat out. Andy had me as his dad, and that was enough. Besides, Charlie never believed I was an Omega anyway. He probably thought Andy was a child I had with some other woman. If I couldn't make him leave, I would just have to ignore him. I was getting ready to go to the hospital for a checkup. Ever since my heat, I'd been getting sporadic headaches. I wasn't sure if it was because of those two or if I was developing migraines. "Dad, where are you going?" "I'll come with you," Andy said, trotting to catch up. "You stay here," I said, turning and crouching down to face my son. I noticed Charlie was following us too. I pointed at my son, signaling for Charlie to take him back inside. For now, he didn't seem like he would try to take Andy away by force. Reluctantly, I had to let him watch my son for a bit. I ruffled Andy's hair and stood up, but as I did, my vision swam with black spots. I felt dizzy and unsteady. I heard my son's anxious voice beside me, accompanied by the sound of frantic footsteps. I opened my mouth to speak, but no sound came out. As I drifted in and out of consciousness, I could hear voices talking nearby, but they sounded unreal. "We really can't tell, Dad?" Andy's voice sounded so sad. But if we do it this way, will it be forever? Forever what? Who was he talking to? What were they hiding from me? I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids felt incredibly heavy. Don't overthink it, sweetie. That voice was so familiar. Took me a moment to place it as Charlie's. Why was he calling my son so affectionately? Could it be he knew everything? What if Charlie took my son away while I was unconscious? I forced my eyes open, my heart pounding. As my vision cleared, I was met with two faces, one large and one small, looking strikingly similar. Andy, so young, had a face full of sorrow and worry. Charlie, as usual, had his brow furrowed, his expression unreadable. Dad, how are you feeling? Andy's big eyes were brimming with tears. I squeezed his little cheek. Dad's fine. Other than the headache, there was nothing else wrong with me. When I was discharged, I tried to take my son home, but Charlie stopped me. Mr. Miller, what do you think you're doing? Charlie held my arm with one hand, then leaned through the car window and pulled out a file. I looked closer and saw it was a DNA test report. Charlie, what is this? I held Andy's hand tightly, afraid that if I blinked, Charlie would snatch him away. It's the paternity test result for you and your son, he said calmly, placing Andy's little backpack in the car. Since you won't accept us being together, let's just get the proof out in the open. I didn't even need to open it. I knew exactly what the results would say. The secret I had hidden for 4 years was now exposed by a single, flimsy piece of paper. My breath hitched, and it took a moment for me to recover. I looked down, suddenly unable to meet Charlie's gaze. My son is not yours. You have another kid, don't you? Why are you trying to take mine? Remembering the baby things I'd seen at his house, I felt a surge of confidence. He was the one who had something to hide in this relationship, not me. Charlie should be the one feeling guilty. In the end, I went back to Charlie's house with Andy. As soon as we walked in, Andy familiarly pulled a pair of slippers from the shoe cabinet in the entryway. Here, Dad. The slippers didn't look new, and next to them were 2 other matching pairs, one large and one small. They were clearly a family set. They must belong to Charlie's other kid. A wave of revulsion washed over me, and I wanted to turn and leave. But Andy seemed to really like Charlie, and he had seen the paternity test. He knew Charlie was his other father. Looking at the slippers in Andy's hand, I had a change of heart. No, I had to stay here. I needed to see whose kid all this baby stuff belonged to. I turned to Charlie. I want a new pair. Andy, holding the slippers, froze, his little face clouded with sadness again. I quickly knelt down to comfort him. Look at this guy, Andy. He invites us to stay here but shows no sincerity. He can't even be bothered to buy us a new pair of slippers. I tossed the slippers he was holding to the side. Andy nodded, burying his face in my neck and rubbing against me. Make do for now. I'll have someone buy new ones, Charlie said, picking up the slippers again. I reluctantly put them on and found that they fit perfectly. So did the pair Andy was wearing. It was as if these slippers had belonged to us all along. Charlie's assistant quickly delivered new slippers. But why were they another set of 3 matching family pairs? I changed Andy's first. For some reason, the little guy was attached to the old pair, looking at them with reluctance. Do you like the design? I asked him gently, putting on my new pair. Andy nodded. I like it. Then when we go home, Dad will buy you another pair with the same design. Okay? The easily pleased child immediately beamed. After cheering up Andy, I looked up and saw the man who was supposed to be making dinner still standing beside us. Weren't you going to cook? I was actually curious to see what cooking skills Charlie had picked up over the last 4 years. Yeah. Charlie nodded, crouching down to unwrap the new pair of slippers on the floor. Why are you changing with us? I said, annoyed. I had no desire to wear matching slippers with Charlie. Charlie said flatly, the old ones were worn out. Without waiting for my reply, he headed to the kitchen. While Charlie was cooking, I wandered through his familiar yet strange house. The furnishings were all just as I remembered from when I used to live here, even the placement of the water glasses. Everything was the same except for that cabinet filled with baby things. It was as if, for the past 4 years, Charlie hadn't been able to let me go at all. But didn't Charlie have another child? Why was he putting on this devoted act for me? The sound of Andy's slippers shuffling across the floor broke the silence. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw his small figure standing on his tiptoes, reaching for the cabinet I had once accidentally opened. I frowned and walked over quickly. Andy, with a jelly packet hanging out of his mouth, saw me and immediately pulled another one from the cabinet. "Here, Dad," he said, offering it to me like a treasure. I didn't take it. "Andy, what have I taught you?" I asked sternly. "Is it okay to just go through other people's things in their house? You didn't even ask before you started eating his food." The cabinet I had been deliberately ignoring was now wide open, thanks to Andy. And not only was it open, he was eating things from inside. It was bad enough that Charlie had another child, but I hadn't even taught my own son proper manners. A wave of failure washed over me. I took the unopened jelly packet from Andy's hand and threw it back into the cabinet. As the cabinet door shut, my emotions finally settled a little. My gaze fell on Andy's downturned lips and the tears welling in his eyes. The sound of his suppressed sobs reached my ears. My heart clenched. I finally realized I had lost control. "Sweetie," I choked out. "I'm so sorry." He must have been terrified by my outburst, because he kept crying, even as I held him. His cries were soft, reminding me of how fragile he was when he was first born. Charlie took a crying Andy away to comfort him. I sat alone in front of that cabinet, feeling a growing sense of unease. Ever since my heat, things had been so strange. How did Charlie know he could find me by following Andy home? Why were Andy and Charlie so close? As if Andy had grown up with him. Andy got along well with the other kids in the neighborhood, but he had never been this openly dependent on anyone besides me. There were too many odd things. The baby supplies in Charlie's house, and the child of his eye had never seen. And the way Charlie always looked at me with that frown. His eyes filled with an undeniable helplessness. Was it me? Or had Charlie known about Andy for the past 4 years, meeting him in secret behind my back? But Andy was just a kid. How could he keep a secret like that? A sharp pain shot through the side of my head, and my vision went black. Took a long time for the feeling to pass before I slowly stood up. I wondered if Andy was still crying. I had been way too harsh on him. I shouldn't have done that. Grabbing an empty glass as an excuse to get water, I walked determinedly toward the kitchen. The hum of the range hood filled the air. Over the noise, I could hear Charlie's deep voice mixed with Andy's tear-thickened one. I carefully peeked through the glass door of the kitchen, trying to make out what they were saying. The fan was too loud, and I couldn't hear clearly. Through the glass, I could see that Andy had stopped crying, but his little eyebrows were furrowed into tiny waves. He was already picking up Charlie's habit of frowning. "I don't want to do this anymore," Andy said with a pout. Charlie wiped a tear from the corner of his eye. "Be patient, sweetie. Amnesia doesn't heal that quickly." Amnesia. The word hit me like a ton of bricks, leaving me dizzy and disoriented. With a crash, the glass slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. My mind filled with nothing but that single word, amnesia. The kitchen door was yanked open, and 2 strikingly similar faces, one large and one small, appeared before me. "Eric, Dad." I stared at them blankly as a piercing pain shot through my head. I have amnesia? Thinking back, it all started to make sense. The closeness between Charlie and Andy, the perfectly fitting slippers at Charlie's house, the unchanged decor, and that cabinet full of baby supplies. All the signs were there, but I didn't know what memories I had lost. As far as I knew, I remembered everything. I remembered my past with Charlie, how I had carried and given birth to Andy all alone. I remembered everything that had happened since we met again. My thoughts were a tangled mess. The diagnostic report was nearly crumpled in my hand. Andy gently took it back from me and smoothed it out. Charlie told me I was suffering from amnesia combined with memory distortion. "You're saying my transmigration was fake?" My head felt like it was about to explode. "And we've been married for 6 years? I thought I had transmigrated to another world, gotten pregnant, and run away after discovering Charlie had a child." How did that story turn into me being a married omega with amnesia? He pulled me into his arms, his large hand massaging my temples. Yes, that's right, Charlie nodded. His expression was calm as he turned to Andy. Sweetie, go get the little red book from the bedroom. Andy quickly disappeared from sight. But I really can't remember any of it. The more I tried to think, the more my head throbbed. All I remembered was waking up in Charlie's arms after the car accident. Then going home with him. After we got together, I found that cabinet. So I broke up with him, got pregnant, and spent 4 years in hiding until Charlie found me. But now Charlie was telling me those memories were false. That only the memory of the car accident was real. You're not lying to me, are you? Charlie sighed helplessly. Why would I need to do that? Would I make our son this sad just for a lie? I thought about it and he had a point. In the time since my heat, it was obvious Charlie was a good dad. Andy relied on him too. Even just now when I made him cry, he needed Charlie to comfort him. Andy came running back holding 2 small red booklets. I took them and saw a photo of me and Charlie on the cover. The date of registration was 6 years ago. Charlie wasn't lying, but it still felt completely foreign to me. I searched my mind in a daze but couldn't find any of these memories. My mind was too chaotic, so I took a leave of absence from work. After dropping our son off at kindergarten, I went back to Charlie's house. His place was filled with so many things from our life together. Maybe looking at them would jog a memory or two. I thought Charlie would be at work, but when I opened the door, I found him sniffing a piece of clothing. What are you doing? I looked closer and saw it was the pajamas I had changed out of this morning. Did my amnesia turn Charlie into a pervert? He looked perfectly calm. Doing laundry. With that, he walked toward the washing machine. But he was only holding one piece of clothing. The air was thick with a woody scent. I followed him. Why are you wearing so much cologne? Even though I liked the scent, it was so strong it was making my gland burn and my knees feel weak. Charlie tossed the pajamas in. Your pheromones are pretty strong yourself. The woody fragrance was making me dizzy, and all I wanted to do was press myself against him. Charlie reached out and touched my forehead. In heat again, I paused. No, it's your cologne. It's too strong, I mumbled. I sniffed the air, but I couldn't detect any of his pheromones. Only that woody scent. Where are your pheromones? What do they smell like? Charlie, who had been carrying me toward the bedroom, stopped and looked down at me. It's not cologne, Eric, he said. His voice tinged with resignation. This is my pheromone. Pheromone. So the scent I thought was woody cologne was actually Charlie's pheromone. I suddenly thought of that nearly empty bottle of perfume. Then that perfume bottle? Yeah, Charlie said calmly. It's extracted pheromones. I was instantly wide awake, staring at him in disbelief. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Pheromone extraction involved inserting a needle directly into the gland to draw out the fluid. And the gland was one of the most sensitive parts of the body. Even an accidental scratch from a fingernail could be intensely painful, let alone having a needle stuck into it to draw out fluid. I gently touched him. Did it hurt? Charlie shook his head. No, I'm sorry. I still can't remember, I said, nuzzling his cheek with my nose. It's okay, Eric. As he laid me down on the bed, I noticed something different about it. Wait, I said, pushing against Charlie. What's wrong? Charlie's breathing was ragged. The intense woody scent swirled around me, making my own breath quicken. I turned my head and saw the bed was covered in a pile of miscellaneous things. I reached out and picked up a piece of my clothing. I picked up another, and it was a towel I used. The 2-meter bed was completely covered. I thought back to when I first got home and saw Charlie sniffing my pajamas. A bold guess formed in my mind. Charlie, I said, holding his head as he nuzzled against me. Are you in your rut? After a long moment, I heard him hum in agreement. Yeah, rut. I asked cautiously, so this is nesting? My unfinished question was smothered by his lips, my breath stolen away. The alpha's rich, woody pheromones enveloped me completely. I winced, holding my aching back as I got out of bed. Beside me, the culprit was still looking for more. No more. An alpha's rut was terrifying. My whole body felt like it was about to fall apart. The gland on my neck had been marked repeatedly with his teeth. Charlie ignored me, his nose tracing a path along my neck. My protests were useless, so I tried a different tactic. Get up, our son will be out of school soon. I tried to push his head away. He peppered my neck with soft kisses, in no hurry at all. His grandma is picking him up. I'm still not doing it again. I was on the verge of tears as he pinned me down. Charlie pressed against me, his voice husky. Eric, honey, have you remembered yet? Hearing that, I tried hard to think. Memories flashed through my mind like a movie reel, too fast to catch. I shook my head, feeling lost. I can't remember. Then we'll keep going, Charlie said, his lips finding mine again. Maybe this will help you remember. The next time I saw my son was 3 days later. Dad, do you remember now? Andy looked at me with hopeful eyes. He kicked off his slippers and climbed onto the bed. Daddy said he was giving you treatment. Hearing that, I shot a glare at Charlie. What kind of nonsense was he telling our son? Not yet, I said, ruffling Andy's chubby cheeks, afraid he'd be disappointed. Andy smiled. It's okay, Dad. Take your time, Charlie added. Charlie got out of bed to make dinner. I held my son and lay back down. I breathed in Andy's milky scent, lying on a bed saturated with the smell of sandalwood. An unprecedented sense of peace filled my heart. Staring at his peaceful, sleeping face, images suddenly began flashing through my mind, one after another. Andy seemed to turn back into a tiny baby, whimpering in my arms. Charlie came in from outside and bent down to pick him up. A moment later, the baby was back beside me, and so was Charlie. The scene shifted, and Charlie looked younger. He was in a school uniform, tall and full of life. He was riding a bicycle, and on the back sat another me, also in a school uniform. Many other fragmented scenes surfaced in my mind. Some were fleeting, others I could grasp. They were scattered pieces, slowly forming a picture of how Charlie and I met, fell in love, and got married. Before I could think further, I heard panicked shouts next to me. Eric? Eric? Dad, wake up. I frowned and forced my heavy eyelids open. A tear-streaked little face crashed into my arms, and I hugged my soft son tightly. I looked at Charlie, and his eyes were full of worry. I'm fine, I just fell asleep. But I think I remembered some things. Hearing that, Charlie let out a sigh of relief and rubbed his brow. He leaned over, kissed me, and then kissed Andy. Don't rush it. As long as you remember me and our boy, that's enough. Don't force it. Just enjoy the present. Andy looked up, pressing his tear-stained cheek against mine. Dad, you just need to remember me and Daddy. I remember, I said, stroking the back of his head. Their comforting words gradually calmed me down. Just as they said, there was no rush. I love Charlie and my son, and they both love me. One day, I'll remember everything. Charlie's epilogue. After the car accident, my husband's memory became distorted. He believed he had transmigrated here, that he was the only Omega in the world. To accommodate this, I suppressed my pheromones and briefed the doctors and nurses. He forgot how we met, how we fell in love, our daily life together. He forgot that our son was already 5 years old. He forgot. Eric didn't remember anything, and his memories were a mess. The doctor told me not to push him, to let him recover slowly. What else could I do? I had to play along with his story. He asked me if I was a beta. He had even forgotten that I'm an alpha. He had forgotten me completely. I was more than just a little angry, but I was also helpless. He had forgotten our son, so I had to have my mother take Andy to live in the house that's under Eric's name. I was still trying to figure out how to get him to live with me again when he started depending on me on his own. Sure enough, deep down, my husband still loves me. So even in his jumbled memories, we still fell in love. Everything was heading in the right direction. I imagined that once he started to recover, I would suddenly tell him we had a 5-year-old son. He would probably freak out, but I couldn't control how things unfolded. He found the baby things we had stored in a cabinet. He thought I had another child and insisted on breaking up with me. I was tempted to just tell Eric the truth about his amnesia right then and there. I didn't want to play this game anymore, and I didn't want to put our son through the pain of not being able to see both of us every day. But the doctor's words echoed in my mind. Because of the baby supplies, Eric moved out. He moved back into his house, the one where Andy was staying. He must have been so upset by what he thought was true that it overwhelmed him. He passed out again. The family doctor came by, and soon after, Eric woke up. When he came to, he believed he was an Omega who had gotten pregnant and spent 4 years in hiding. This was actually better in a way. I wasn't sure how to write my mom and our son into Eric's distorted narrative, but he went ahead and did it himself. With no other choice, I moved into the apartment across the hall from him, hiding from his sight every day while secretly keeping in touch with our son. Thankfully, Andy is a smart, good boy. He was more than happy to play along to help his dad with his memory loss. The only hard part was him sneaking over to cry to me every day, saying that his dad still hadn't remembered. Eric's heat arrived, and our son let me know. He was very clear about one thing. He thought he was the only Omega in the world, which meant I was the only one who could help him. So he didn't turn me away. After his heat, I decided I couldn't just keep up this slow burn approach. I could wait, but our son couldn't. When I brought him over for a nap, he would cry in his sleep, wishing for Eric to get his memory back. After consulting with the doctor, I started to give Eric a little push. I showed him the paternity test with Andy, brought them both back home, and by sheer coincidence, my rut, which hadn't occurred in a long time, suddenly hit. Maybe it was the pheromones, or maybe it was the marking. Eric said he remembered a little. Sure enough, my husband really does love me. The moment my pheromones entered his system, his body remembered our past together. He even remembered our son as a baby. Still, I told him to take it slow, not to rush. The doctor said the same thing. We have the rest of our lives, and Andy is still young. If he can't remember, that's okay too. We still have a whole future to create together. There's no need to be stuck on the past.